I asked you guys if you wanted me to do this again, and unanimously the numbers were yes. Please continue reading through this. There's a lot to read. What's up, nerds? It's your boy, the OGGM, 10:50 in the morning on the first day of September in the year of our Lord, Steve the Cat, 2023. I guess it's a different month, so we have to change. Hello, Kitty. We've got Lost Dungeons of Torsburg that was sent to us by Greg Sevenson. We've got some thank yous from people who watched the previous video. We've got from Daniel, who said, thanks for the mention. Technically, Tonisburg is probably the fourth multi-level dungeon. The first two were Blackmoor and Glendower by Arnson, followed by Greyhawk by Gygax. Rob Kuntz's El Raja Key and Mike Munder's dungeon are around the same time too, but Tonisburg is the first pre-multi-level dungeon to be printed in its entirety and may end up being the only one we still have in complete state, depending upon what's going on with Castle Zaggy. But yeah, okay, so thanks. And we got one from Griffin Morgan saying, thank you for the review. The scale of the maps is an original D&D scale, which is always 10 feet per square. The dungeon descriptions will make more sense after you read the book. This is from one of the authors. We've gotten some negative stuff too about it, like how dare I? Nobody wants to see me. This isn't really a thing, blah, blah, blah. So let's continue reading The Lost Dungeons of Tonisburg. So on page 0, we have basically safety tools. And then we have a referee note. Then we have the table of contents. Then we have the how to use this book. And then we have the time before RPG by Greg. I started playing war games with Avalon Hill's D-Day when I was 8 years old. Soon I was playing other similar board games such as Tactics, Gettysburg, Africa, and Blitzkrieg. By the time I was in junior high school, there was a gaming club meeting on Saturdays at my house in Michigan, which included Scott and Dave, John and Richard, Bob and Mike, Fred, Steve, Tim, and Fred. When I was in 7th grade, I took my Blitzkrieg game with a bunch of homemade counters to my social studies class, where we divided the class into teams representing the various countries on the map and carried out diplomacy, which ended up in a world war. In addition to board games, our club tried miniatures by fighting out ancient battles of marathon using war game research group rules. In 1968, our club joined the International Federation of Wargaming, and through that, I met Mike. Mike introduced me to Fight for the Skies, a World War I air combat game he developed where each player was a pilot and you kept track of your pilots from game to game, and your pilot's experience made him better in certain situations. Mike had 1.72 scale models of the aircraft, and we fought the battles on his basement floor, which had 8-inch tiles, making the perfect game board with the models. We used the airplanes from a Milton Bradley game called Tog Fight to play Fight in the Skies on a sewing board. Mike Carl introduced me to a set of rules called Corns, a World War II combat game where each player was an individual soldier, having referee determine the results of our actions, with each guy meeting with the referee separately each round to make your moves. When I got my driver, this has nothing to do with D&D. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. So here we go. I was first introduced to the world of Blackmoor over Christmas break during my junior year of high school, 1970s. Dave Arnson's basement when we first went on the first ever dungeon adventure. So Greg is claiming he was there since day one. When I arrived on the Saturday, I was expecting to see Napoleonic battle setups. Instead, I found a model of the town Blackmoor sitting on the table. It was my first experience with a role-playing game by modern definition. However, many of the aspects of role-playing were already part of our gaming group's culture by that time, i.e. he's referring to, the mapping and the single characters and stuff like that. Dave described how the evil wizard Jim and his pet Barlog, John, stole something from the Baron and fled into the dungeon beneath the castle. Then he ordered us, his guards, to hunt them down and recover whatever it was. We were the first fantasy role players. Dave was the first referee to ever say, "What do you want to do?" We were the first players to say we went to down the stairs in the dungeon. That's what we did. We started going down that famous wide stairway into the main chamber of the first level. We had to choose a door, proceed into the passage, and went even further into the dungeon. It was an exciting new experience. We were not moving figures on the maps. Dave was describing where we were and what we were seeing, and each of us would describe what we were going to do with whatever the situation was, and it was almost all verbal. Dave was an excellent referee. His description of the places we were exploring gave me a clear mental picture of what was going on. Dave used vivid language to describe things. He could evoke emotions like fear or courage, which went a long way in making the dungeon adventures seem real to me. Sometimes he would actually howl like a wolf or provide other sounds so we could understand the situation. These acted out clues impacted how I saw the situation and I would react. At some point, I became so immersed and it felt like I was really there in the dungeon looking at the smoking pot on the pedestal in the middle of the room at the bottom of the stairs we were going down. The first thing we do is enter the room, which was full of haze from the burning pot. As we pass by the fiery pot, I can feel the heat from it and can smell the sulfur. There is a glowing liquid begins to bubble and a fireball forms over the pot. A fireball comes flying at us and we are forced to dive out of the side to get away. As we delved further into the labyrinth, we came to a room with a statue holding a sword. One of my companions tries to get the sword and gets flung across the room by an electric shock. Bill finally tries to pick it up and is the only one able to touch it without suffering a shock. He immediately becomes the hero of our party. After many passages and rooms, we finally arrive at a room where we encounter a wizard and his pet Barlog, who proceeds to make mincemeat out of the party, leaving only myself alive. Just as I think they are going to finish me off, they tell me to return to the surface and tell everyone not to enter the dungeon below the castle again. The only treasure I have is the magic sword, and I don't want to leave it behind. Yet I'm afraid to touch it for fear of what might happen, so I carefully wrap it in cloth to pick it up and carry it to the castle above. The wizard makes my journey out of the dungeon easy for me to follow, lighting all the passages with an eerie magical glow. When I get to the surface, I know I have to return and avenge all of my dread companions. Still afraid to touch the magic sword, I sell it to the Baron for 150 gold pieces and think to myself, I am now a rich man. After the game, I went on to become a powerful knight, the Great Savani. In the summer of 1973, I was living with John and Richard and Bob. The apartment was within walking distance of the West Bank campus of the University of Minnesota, where I was going to school at the time. John was also taking classes. We were all working at parking lots in downtown Minneapolis. I played the Your Sword Empire in John's Star Empire sci-fi campaign, and also at a Your Sword PC in the role-playing part of the game. John was also running World War II board game campaigns. I played France. One day that summer, Dave Arneson gave us our own copy of the playset rules for Dungeons & Dragons. The playtest rules were eventually what was published later, but there were probably differences beyond from being typed on 8x11 paper and 3 little brown books. I can't give you any details. It's too long ago, and I didn't give the playtest copy after Dave Arneson gave me the little brown box. We wanted to play in the world of Blackmore, but couldn't use the town of Blackmore itself since that was Dave territory. I talked to Dave about setting up alternate locations where we could have an adventure. Dave showed us a map of a region and suggested the city Tonisburg. At that point in the Blackmore campaign, Svenny had only been in Tonisburg once. It was a location of a major slave market, and Svenny had purchased his companion and future wife Xenia from there. Dave was always encouraging and respectful to everyone's input in Blackmore. The city's name was changed when the first fantasy companion was published, since Dave couldn't or wouldn't use my material, although I would gladly have let him use the name. Yet the location is easy enough to find on those maps, as it was renamed to Vestfold. I designed a map of the city in 2 underworlds. One underworld was taken straight from a mazes book. When I ran the maze underworld for the first time, I was amazed that John was able to navigate the maze and go directly to the main treasure room without taking a single wrong turn. After that experience, I didn't use mazes underworlds very much. The second world was Tonisburg, what you have here. I did a marathon session after several days generating the dungeon, and then went through and populated using the playtest resort. Tonisburg dungeon is a living underworld. As people explored it and things happened, I made changes to the map and adjustments for the creatures that live there. This is how my Tonisburg dungeon was born. Greg. Tonisburg is a leisure dungeon. You will learn how to imbue your own game with the true flavors of adventures and exploration in the original fantasy gaming group first explored these catacombs. It's most important that you will learn that Tonisburg is deadly. Players who wander in casually expecting to kill monsters and gather treasures effortlessly will find a quick and easy demise. Tonisburg Island rises tall out of the river's mouth, where the silent waters flow sluggishly into the icy sea as it passes both the island and the North's largest cities. The island itself is an outcast suburb of a city where thieves' den of seedy establishments, slave auctions, and ramshackle slums nestle between the smugglers' ports. Even the town guards avoid patrolling, all of which is firmly under the thumb of the Order Dracone. The island rises higher to the south, where atop a high promontory are scattered the ruins of an old tower. Whatever built for defense or as a beacon for ship navigating the river, none now remember. Amidst these ruins can be found the entrance to an ancient catacomb. The ruins are an open secret, closely guarded by the Order Dracone and their allies, and used for their own nefarious purposes. Blah, 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 nefarious purposes. What lies deep inside is unknown, but promises incredible wealth and power if you're brave enough to explore it. Beware, it is said that sleeping in the levels are a nightmare terror from the times of the dark gods. If you dare enter this dungeon, tread lightly and pray the gods for mercy. Player immersion is the goal for you, the referee of the dungeon. This book will teach you how to make the game seem real. And then we have one. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34 pages of DM guides and random tables on how to run Tonisburg before we get to the actual dungeon. The actual dungeon is only 10 levels. Each level seems to be about 30 rooms. Hopefully it makes sense. And then we have basically a mini version of the player's handbook starting on page 96, where it gives you, basically how to make characters and stuff like that. So it comes with a version of the player's handbook from, I guess, old D&D or his take on old D&D. It's got the classic, core 4. So yeah, the dungeon itself is only about 40 pages, 10 levels, about 30 rooms per page. And everything else is just DM's tips, which I think is the reason why it's getting so much good press, is just the amount of information about how to run this classic style of gaming that is in this product. So do you want me to continue going through it? Let me know. If you never want to have me go through this ever again, let me know. That is today's read through from the Lost Dungeon of Tonisburg. If you haven't had a chance to pick it up yet, check out the link down below, and I will talk to you later after lunch. See ya.